638. That is the official number of ways the CIA tried to end Fidel Castro. It wasn't just a state mission, it was a decade-long obsession that turned the world's most powerful intelligence agency into a laboratory of the absurd. Imagine a boardroom in Langley. Top-tier scientists and Ivy League operatives are brainstorming. Their goal isn't a satellite or a new missile. They are discussing how to make a cigar explode in a man's face, or how to lace a diving suit with a fungus designed to cause severe and irreversible tissue damage. By 1960, Cuba was no longer just an island 90 miles from Florida. It was a black hole for American intelligence. Operation Mongoose was launched with a massive budget and a simple premise: Fidel must die. But every time a sniper took a breath or a poison was stirred into a milkshake, something went wrong. Was it incompetent tradecraft, pure, impossible luck? Or did Castro have a shadow network that saw every move before it was made? Today, we are opening the files on the most bizarre assassination plots in history. From the Mafia's involvement in Havana's casinos to the lover who held a vial of poison in her hand while lying in Castro's bed. This is the story of how one man survived 600 attempts on his life, and how the CIA almost destroyed itself trying to stop him. Her name was Marita Lorenz, and she was 19 when she stepped onto the deck of the MS Berlin in Havana Harbor. She wasn't a trained operative, she was a girl who fell for a revolutionary. For months, Marita lived in Suite 2408 of the Havana Hilton, Castro's improvised headquarters. She saw the cigars, the late-night maps, and the paranoia. But after a personal tragedy caused by Castro and a bitter departure to the US, the CIA saw an opportunity. They didn't find a spy, they created a weapon out of a broken heart. Frank Sturgis, a notorious CIA asset, handed her a jar of cold cream. Inside were 2 capsules of botulinum toxin, the most lethal poison known to man. One microscopic drop meant respiratory failure and a silent heart attack. No marks, no autopsy leads. In January 1960, Marita returned to the Hilton. But the tropical heat of Havana was unforgiving. By the time she reached Castro's room, the capsules had melted into the cream, turning the lethal dose into a useless grey sludge. Then the door opened. Castro didn't call the secret police. He didn't shout. He walked to the window, looked out at the city, and then turned to her. He knew. In a move of ultimate psychological dominance, he handed Marita his own .45 caliber pistol. "You can't kill me," he reportedly said. "Nobody can." Marita Lorenz didn't pull the trigger. She realized that in the world of Fidel Castro, even your enemies are eventually hypnotized by your shadow. She left Havana the next day, leaving the CIA's most expensive romance to rot in a jar of face cream. After the humiliation at the Bay of Pigs, the CIA's frustration mutated into Operation Mongoose. It was no longer just about a sniper, it was a total war on a sovereign nation with a $50 million annual budget. An astronomical sum in 1961. The director of the operation, Edward Lansdale, envisioned a psychological collapse. The agency began lacing Cuban sugar exports with non-lethal but foul-smelling chemicals to ruin Cuba's economy. They dropped leaflets promising a second revolution and sent commando teams to blow up oil refineries and contaminate livestock with biological agents. But the most surreal part of Mongoose was the alliance with the underworld. The CIA reached out to Johnny Roselli and Sam Giancana, heads of the Chicago outfit. The Mafia wanted their Havana casinos back. The CIA wanted Castro gone. It was a marriage of convenience between the government and the mob. They didn't just use guns, they got creative. One plan involved the beard. The CIA knew the beard was Castro's source of charismatic power. They planned to dust his shoes with thallium salts, a potent depilatory, while he was on a trip abroad. The goal, to make his iconic beard fall out, turning the revolutionary leader into a laughingstock. Another idea was the glowing shell. Knowing Castro's love for skin diving, they spent thousands creating a booby-trapped, brightly colored seashell. It was supposed to be placed on his favorite reef, packed with enough explosives to level a building. While Langley debated these comic book gadgets, Castro's G2 intelligence was already inside the loop. For every agent the CIA landed on the beaches, 2 Cuban informants were already waiting in the bushes. The mongoose wasn't hunting a snake, it was walking straight into a trap. As Operation Mongoose stalled, the CIA's Technical Services Division, their real-life version of James Bond's Q branch, began to lose touch with reality. It wasn't just about killing Castro anymore, it was about the science of the kill. Enter the exploding cigar project. This wasn't a cartoon gag. On February 13, 1961, a CIA official was actually handed a box of Castro's favorite cigars, treated with botulinum toxin. The toxin was so potent that merely touching the cigar to your lips would cause a fatal shutdown of the nervous system within hours. But the cigars never left the warehouse. Why? Because the CIA's own logistics experts couldn't guarantee that a double agent wouldn't accidentally smoke one himself. Then there was the infamous hallucinogen plot. The agency planned to spray Castro's broadcasting studio with powerful psychotropic aerosols. The goal wasn't to kill him, but to make him hallucinate during a live nationwide radio address. They wanted the maximum leader to start babbling nonsense, destroying his image as a rational revolutionary in front of millions. And the diving suit? It wasn't just infected. The agency's lab spent weeks culturing Madura foot, a horrific fungus that causes irreversible tissue damage, and lethal bacterial cultures to lace the breathing apparatus. They even went as far as preparing a gift-wrapped suit to be handed over by American lawyer James Donovan during the Bay of Pigs prisoner negotiations. Donovan, unaware of the poison, decided the suit was too cheap for a world leader and bought a higher quality one on his own. He unknowingly saved Castro's life simply by being a polite guest. The CIA wasn't fighting a war. They were fighting a ghost. And while they spent millions on fungal cultures and hallucinogenic sprays, Castro was busy turning their own gadgets against them. While the CIA was playing with poisoned face creams, Fidel Castro was building a counterintelligence fortress. He didn't just survive, he enjoyed the game. His personal security, led by the fanatical Fabian Escalante, turned Havana into a hall of mirrors where American spies were the only ones not in on the joke. By the mid-60s, the CIA's desperation hit a peak. They moved from assassination to character assassination. One plan involved dusting Castro's radio booth with a chemical that mirrored the effects of a high-dose stimulant, hoping he'd suffer a nervous breakdown on air. Another involved a fountain pen rigged with a needle so thin the victim wouldn't feel the sting. But the real black hole was the Bay of Pigs aftermath. The CIA had funneled millions into stay-behind networks, Cuban rebels supposed to rise up. In reality, nearly every single one of those networks was a double play. Cuban G2 agents were the ones operating the CIA radios, collecting American cash and laughing while they sent back fake intelligence. The Mafia also realized the tide was turning. Gangsters like Santo Traficante Jr. took the CIA's money, used their logistics to move their own contraband, and never intended to pull the trigger. For the mob, the CIA wasn't a partner. It was a bank account with no oversight. In Langley, the Castro problem became a career killer. Operatives were burnt out. High-level directors were fired. The agency was so focused on the man in the olive-drab fatigues that they missed the bigger picture. The Soviet Union was moving nukes into the very backyard they were trying to clean up. The obsession with one man had blinded the world's most powerful intelligence machine. The war against Fidel Castro didn't end with a bang. It withered away in the filing cabinets of Langley. By 1975, the Church Committee, a massive Senate investigation, exposed the CYA's executive action programs to the public. The world finally saw the exploding cigars, the poisoned wetsuits, and the Mafia deals. What was meant to be a secret masterclass in espionage became a global punchline. Fidel didn't just survive, he outlasted 10 US presidents, from Eisenhower to Obama. He saw the Berlin Wall rise and fall. He watched the Soviet Union, his greatest benefactor, vanish from the map. The ultimate irony. Despite the 638 plots, the $1 billion spent, and the deployment of the world's most advanced toxins, Fidel Castro died in his own bed at the age of 90. The CIA's greatest failure wasn't that they couldn't kill him, it was that every failed attempt made him a martyr of the Cold War, a living ghost that the most powerful nation on Earth simply couldn't touch. Today, the files of Operation Mongoose are declassified. They serve not as a manual for spies, but as a warning of what happens when obsession replaces intelligence. In the shadows of Havana, the ghosts of the mongoose still linger, a reminder of a time when the world's best spies were defeated not by an army, but by a jar of face cream, a cheap diving suit, and one man who refused to die.